In my last video where I built this giant prototype, a lot of you told me to remake him entirely out of Lego. And yeah, some of you were not happy about the clay. So today we're fixing that. I'm rebuilding the whole thing using only Lego pieces. Let's start by taking our prototype apart. First, we'll remove the head. We're definitely going to rebuild it entirely out of Lego. Then we'll take off Mommy Longleg's arm. And of course the rib cage, I actually really like how that piece turned out. It just clicks somehow. But we're going to remake that out of Lego as well. I already have a few ideas on how to do it in a really cool way. And of course, the fur on the back that I made from a sock. I actually love how it looks. And I know some of you were worried that I used air dry clay as a base. Like it would harden and stick permanently to the pieces, making it impossible to remove. But no, everything comes off super easily. I've worked with it many times before. It comes off in one clean piece. Alright, let's clear away all the extra parts and get back to the prototype. I decided to start with the head, more specifically the eyes. From there, we'll build everything else and lock in the proportions for the whole head. Then I came up with this idea for how to attach the teeth. We've actually seen something similar in my video where I built all the characters from Zonomaly. I took a lot of inspiration from their mouths and the way they look. This is where the head will connect. Alright, now let's move on to the most important part, the jester hat. This is where things get a little tricky. I don't have many yellow pieces, so it's definitely going to be a challenge. But I've set the basic proportions, so now it's time to start building and figure things out as I go. I came up with this design for the hat, where a small bell hangs at the bottom attached to this little connector piece right here. And for the bell, I'm actually using a super old Lego part. It's a minifigure head with the face completely worn off. This thing is probably around 30 years old.
30 years.
Which is honestly kind of crazy. So this is how the red part of the hat turned out, and honestly, I'm really happy with it. Now let's move on to the next section, the blue part. I did run into a bit of a problem here. I just couldn't find a piece like this in blue since they're pretty rare in my collection. So I ended up using a gray one instead, but honestly it still looks pretty good. Now let's think about the backside. I basically don't have any yellow pieces left. They're seriously in short supply. So I had to come up with some alternatives. I dug through everything I had, gathered all the yellow parts I could find, and built this kind of structure. It actually looks pretty nice, and in the end, I'm happy with the result. After all, these parts don't have to be perfectly identical anyway. Alright, let's attach the head to the body. I'll quickly show some footage from my previous video where I built the body. And if you'd like a full tutorial, like a 1-hour video where I show everything step by step so you can recreate this figure yourself, let me know in the comments. That's kind of a whole separate topic, how I build things. Turning it into a full tutorial video would definitely be more for enthusiasts and fans, rather than a general audience. So yeah, tell me in the comments. Alright, let's put the head on. It didn't attach the way I originally planned, so I had to improvise a bit and build this kind of neck. And yeah, it has some obvious downsides. The head doesn't sit very securely on it. I often notice that in many Chinese sets. For example, I recently reviewed a whole collection of figures from 99 Nights in the Forest. They usually don't reinforce the arms at all. Everything just falls apart really easily. It might look decent at first, but playability clearly isn't a priority, and the figure just collapses in your hands. Personally, I think it's really important to always think about extra reinforcement, like I did here with the arms. So yeah, always think ahead about how you're going to strengthen your build, so it doesn't fall apart while you're actually playing with it. So this is what our head and neck ended up looking like. Now let's move on to Mommy Longlegs' arm. The first time I built it, I didn't even realize I had the right pieces to make something like this. The construction is super simple. Honestly, it doesn't really need much attention. Overall, it's somewhat similar to the arms of Kissy Missy and Huggy Wuggy that I built in a previous video. I wanted to add some kind of blue detail on the wrist, but I couldn't come up with anything elegant. Everything I tried just looked kinda off. Alright, now let's move on to the rib cage. In my previous video about 99 Nights in the Forest, when we were building the owl, we used these kinds of pieces for the feathers. And that gave me the idea, why not use them to create a rib cage? The structure is very easy to assemble, and you can even slightly adjust the pieces, giving the ribs a bit of an angle, just like they have in real life. Overall, I'm really happy with how it turned out. I also decided to add a decorative piece on top, and a base platform where we'll attach the rib cage from below. Alright, now let's move on to the Poppy gas tanks. I completely forgot to add them in the first video, so let's fix that now. At first, I came up with this kind of design. I actually like it, but I ran into a problem. I don't have enough of these pieces, so making 4 identical tanks just isn't possible. So I found some alternatives. red and black parts from those big ski beady toilet sets. And for the round cap, I can swap it out with these kinds of pieces. Alright, let's build 4 tanks. So this is what we ended up with. These tanks will go on the sides of the prototype. By the way, when I was thinking about the valves, I also considered using these little parts. But in the end, I felt like the cross-shaped ones looked way more interesting. Alright then, let's move on to the most challenging part. This furry structure on the back. We need to somehow make it look fluffy. But before we build it, I remembered that someone in the comments said I mixed up the places of Huggy Wuggy's and Kissy Missy's arms. So let's quickly fix that. Now on to the back. I've been struggling for quite a while trying to come up with a good design. There's a lot going on here. Let me quickly show you my first attempt at building this part. It turned out kind of, not fluffy enough, too small, just not very interesting. But I still wanted to show it, because not every design works on the first try. As you can see, it just doesn't have that volume or texture. Overall, I wasn't happy with this version at all. Unfortunately, I don't have many purple pieces. I could have tried to build up the fluffiness just by adding more volume, but I simply don't have enough of those parts. So I had to rethink the whole approach. Oh, and by the way, before rebuilding it, I decided to install the rib cage first, just to see how everything would look together. That's where I had to remove that little stud on top, and without it, the rib cage fit perfectly. So this was my first version, and it was clearly missing that fluffy, voluminous look on the back. I ended up taking everything apart and starting over. Once I finish rebuilding it, I'll show the structure in more detail, but for now I'm just showing the process of assembling this furry back section in fast forward. It's actually surprising. At first I thought this would be one of the easier parts, but I ended up spending a ton of time on it. It turned out to be way more challenging than I expected to make it look good. Let me show you the structure now. Here you can see how I attach these purple pieces at different angles. The fluffy effect comes from those little studs sticking upward, combined with a bit of randomness in how the plates are layered. Because fur never lies flat, it goes in all directions. So by layering the pieces in a slightly random way, the figure ends up looking much more puffy. And this is where we attach our pipe. Alright, it's time to bring everything together into one final build. When I started attaching the Poppy gas tanks, I realized they were too big, so I removed one bottom piece from each and made them a bit smaller. I decided to keep the mounting super simple, one connection on each side. Overall, there shouldn't be any issues with how they're attached. And finally, I realized I needed to swap the hands. The thumbs on Kissy Missy and Huggy Wuggy were facing the wrong directions. And I know there are going to be people in the comments who will notice every tiny detail and call it out. Now let's take a look at the final result. But before that, I just want to say one more time. If you'd like to see a full detailed tutorial, like a full 1-hour video where I show exactly how I built everything, make sure to let me know in the comments. I'll break everything down step by step so you can recreate these same builds yourself. Alright, let's check out the final figure, how it turned out. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. I'm really looking forward to your support. It genuinely helps a lot. Your comments and ideas about what you'd like to see next are super valuable to me. Don't forget to subscribe and drop a like. Thank you so much, and I'll see you soon. Bye.